Hey, this is Christian Buckley with CollabTalk.
This is Michal Sobotkiewicz with KanBo.
And we're talking today about the content transparency and the importance of having transparency. And we've talked a number of topics. We've talked about Graph. We've talked about a lot of the new features that are available. We've talked about Microsoft Teams and how, the kind of the flattening of permissions across, a lot of these products and services these days. But specifically when you're talking about, from a SharePoint perspective, content transparency, more and more of the features that are being released, especially when you think of like communication sites, it's about sharing information out to a broader audience. It's unlocking a lot of the content that's being created by an organization and sharing that out. And so communication sites, which are like the ability to go and share news, it's the you've got your team site, but then you have a communication site that's pulling news from different sources that you set up to surface that information to more and more people within your organization is becoming increasingly important. And I know that, Michael, when you're talking about, KanBo and a lot of that content that is being shared out through tasks, through the conversations that are happening there, that you also have that philosophy of keeping that content transparent, fairly flat in its hierarchy and structure to give more people access to that.
Yeah, that is correct. KanBo is more concentrating on work and the information that you need to actually perform the work. And at the communication sites, for example, they are clearly, to me, something like a refresh concept of, those web part pages. I think the web part pages will die.
Right. I think so too, because they're trying to create more of these out of the box experiences. And it's a much better look. You can still go do that. You can still modify a communication site how you want to construct it. But Microsoft is trying to create more polished, as they keep using the word beautiful, beauty is in the eye of the beholder around those sites. But to make it as easy to go and create those, out of the box, so you're not having to use all of those web parts to get it to look the way that you want, and to be responsive and to work in a mobile experience, kind of all those things. So communications sites are a package out of the box solution. Yes,
this is actually what it is. And I think mobile was actually the last drop in the bucket that, make it full. So they needed to go for something that is more contemporary. Because if you look at WordPress and all the stuff you can get out of the box, they already have like just-in-time designers and preview and all the stuff. And people inside of the companies in the intranets or in the projects, they also need some kind of a tool where they can quickly compile some facts, some pictures, and have it presented nicely so they can inform others. But this information is rather static. I mean, there are some dynamic pieces, dynamic parts.
Yeah, it is static. You're still talking about content that's coming from team sites. And while you can add other things, like you can add things like the Twitter feed to it, or link in and have like a Yammer discussion as part of that. Again, you're still talking about different web parts that are added in, just out of the box, and configure them and point them to those sources.
Yes, I mean there are dynamic elements for sure, but I think as the name says, communication sites, I would say it's also, the name is very good, because what you're doing is you are creating your own newspaper. I mean, for whatever the readers are, if it's the company, if it's a project team, if it's a department, whatever, it's this. And I think it's becoming, I saw it, I used it 2 weeks ago, and it's already, having a lot of stuff you can really use, and you don't need to read a manual for that. And that's basically, the Facebook idea. You don't need the manual, you just use it.
Right.
And now, KanBo on the other side can be one of the suppliers of the dynamic stuff, like, trending cards, or maybe an activity stream that is coming actually of the work. But we could see the sites to hook in and supply some information, so you don't need to retype it from KanBo into the site to inform people. That would be something that where we definitely already have shared, or have something on our feature queue to have web parts that can expose some of the information of KanBo. And you can say, for example, please show a stream like from Twitter, but only these events, like creating of new cards, assigning people, or maybe changing the status. So it's like someone looks to this communication size and see like, all right, I see what is happening. If I need more detail, I just open KanBo and then I see the full detail. And this is how we see communication sites. Definitely the right direction into giving transparency, but transparency is like a knife, and it has two edges. One is good because you get informed, and the other is too much information. So you need to find a balance. And so that's why I think we need something else really to help people to get informed about what is happening, actually, what is really like, down to the tasks, down to the real work.
And Microsoft is trying to provide different solutions. And one of the things that was announced at Ignite was the hub sites. So, and hub sites, and the way that I look at this, team sites and communication sites, and so you have team sites, which is like the project team. This is our kind of our home base for everything happening with that project or initiative, or it could be an organizational team site, like our PMO have a site that we go to and keep all that information. Where a communication site is more like it's almost like the team newsletter of those activities, and I think you're right, you do need to, just because you can connect everything and have it in this other format, doesn't mean that you should be thoughtful about what do I need people to see on a regular basis and to be updated on what, like maybe the team site has a blog, and I want to make sure that is the latest posts are always surfaced there. And the team, the organizational or the project, Twitter feed or this other information, all of that useful in the communication site. The the hub site. Thank you. Yeah, I know that's not going to confuse anybody. I know. The hub site, which was talked about, and the availability is, I think, like end of 2017 or early 2018. I have to go back and look at all the dates that were announced at Ignite. But is the next level up is an aggregation of those like multiple communications and team sites. So I might even go in there and say, okay, well, Michael, you and I you're my manager, and you have your peers, the director level, and I run the PMO, and so I want to have a communication hub I'm already confused. A hub site that leverages various communication and team sites as to like one location. So I can then point you to this top level hub site that looks at all of everything within the PMO that I think feel are relevant to you and your peers. I can create that to you and serve that up to you. What's nice about that, what the hub site does that's different than what the communication site does, is that it then applies a single branding and the look and feel, the capability to all of the child sites, communication and team sites that are within that. And so here's something that's powerful, probably the best part of the story there for the hub sites, is that something that I know is extremely rare, but is a reorganization. And I say that extremely rare as a joke because, my last 2 years at Microsoft, I had 6 managers. We were like in a constant state of reorg where we were. And so every time we did that, my team owned all of the SharePoint sites, we were having to go in there and reconstruct these SharePoint sites. And it just got to be ridiculous where we said, let's not put a name, let's not put a brand on anything. Let's just leave it as functional there so it doesn't matter. But the hub site allows you to go in there and do that. Say, hey, look, we've these 5 organizations that are within this one business unit. 2 of them got merged over here. We inherited one new one. You can quickly go restructure. release those other team sites over to that new organization, incorporate the new one in, it automatically picks up the branding. A team site or communication site can only be a part of one hub site to inherit all of that look and feel and branding. But again, Michael, it's not trying to recreate your world of how you use SharePoint, but it's a very specific and out-of-the-box capability that allows you to very quickly and dynamically create this roll-up experience for this set of users that need to have access to all these subsites. So like communication sites, it's meant to be out of the box, something that can be done very quickly, is draw from all of these working sites, and then have that consistent look and feel and work within a great mobile experience, kind of all those things. Another very powerful tool, but it still goes back to your point, which is that you still, at the end, have to have those working activities in that team site that are being surfaced maybe through the communication site and then up through that hub site. You still have to have that, that place where you go to get the actual work done. And this is just another way of making that work more visible.
Yes, and I think as you were explaining this dynamic changes in your departments and with your managers, it came to me. I once listened to an interview of Steve Jobs. It was in the 80s, where he, for the first time, really made people think about this, that in future, I mean, from his perspective, you will have organization units that will be changing much faster the structures than you can move furniture around. That's why you need to connect the computers so you can actually change the connections between the nodes of one organization or of the project at this speed as the market requires it. So this reminded me of his vision, and this is actually that was possible in SharePoint, because you could build a team site or a project site and then connect people to it and then have your information there. But we are realizing that this structure is now becoming too slow to keep with the world. So what you need is actually, you need to decouple now the let's say, it's not really physical, but let's call it the physical structure where you store your documents, or where you have the sites and stuff like that, or department information. And now suddenly you need something that will use a bit of that, a bit of this, a bit of that, and this is the new structure for the next 2 weeks. And
that's a great way to describe it too, that these capabilities, you're allowing you to start decoupling. That's a great way to describe that.
Yeah, because we introduced that when we for the first, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we introduced in KanBo something which is called data sources, which means you can create a board in KanBo and then decide to which document libraries you want to connect to this board in order to use them inside of cards. Because we realized that once you have a structure of files, changing the structure is almost impossible. So it has a very slow speed of changing. But having boards with different structures, with different people and so on, that actually need to use these documents, this is much faster. And we came up with this decoupling mechanism saying, hey, it's no problem. You can go ahead and you can create a board and create a library that was even there before KanBo, or was out of a different project, and connect it with this board and use the document. So the structures stayed the same, but through this decoupling, you could have boards in a structure that you like, but still make use of documents and store documents at the original places. And when I see what is now happening with the site, with the hub sites, it's actually, there is a strong need because of the transparency, because of the transparency, and because of the structures that were built and they cannot be changed. There is this need for consolidation from a certain perspective, and this is actually the instrument for that is a hub site, because now you can say, I want these pieces of information to be visible at at glance, because this is what I need today. And compiling them is actually that what you need as a manager. So you are actually compiling an intelligent dashboard. But it's of course a downside if you can only connect one side to one hub, because that's not
right.
how the real world looks like.
And that was my first, and I was thinking of, that was my first thing that I cued in on too, is that I asked the question of the product team about, if that was something that they were looking at expanding on, because there are many examples of like shared services organizations that have, shared set of resources around that. You either, and the workaround for that is to, well, you can add like a list of links as a web part within that around, like, right. Okay. So so then you still have to have that hierarchy and think about permission structure around that. And so you're closing off those things. But because, and so there's also talk about the ability to add into the roll-up sites like the shared services that do not inherit the branding and look and feel, but point to these shared resources. So it is something that, right away we were brought up. That was actually discussed, a number of MVPs in the pre-day for Ignite, sharing some feedback on the presentation there. So that is, Microsoft is thinking about how to expand that. That's really just the version 1 as it goes live has that limitation, but I think it just goes back to we're more and more seeing the decoupling or the flattening of content and permissions, so that we can consume these this information different ways. That it's much more dynamic based on the context of our projects, of our network, of the relationships there, and also that the discovery capabilities get stronger and stronger as we get this kind of decoupling going on, so that the system gets smarter about serving up content and people and activities that it believes are relevant to what we're actually doing in our work.
Yeah.
That when I think of intelligent system, the future of the intelligent system, that's what it is. It's like search is great, improving search, fantastic. But tell me what it is that I'm not asking for. I want search to anticipate my needs and serve up things that I've not yet asked for.
That is actually the next module we're working on. It's called the brain module. I'm just joking. Yes. No.
Then we will truly have shifted over into the Matrix at that point. Right?
Yeah. I think I should also watch the Matrix again. To get some great ideas somewhere encoded in the film. Yeah. I like that very much.
Increasingly relevant to the modern workplace. Yes. Yeah.
It's becoming a little. It's becoming scary, but that's the way it goes. But here, even if the hub sites are working good and great, and you will be able to connect one site to be source for many hub sites, I think you will have scenarios where you need much more finer granularity than a site. So this is how we think in KanBo about this. So we're saying the card is actually the building block. So we came up with this idea of having so-called virtual boards, where you can create a virtual board and then create a structure, obviously, board with lists, and then put cards on it from different projects, different boards, different stories, different departments, and then construct actually something like a dashboard or actually a board. But the purpose of the board is to consolidate information around a certain topic, project, or let's say a company target. That's a good one. Or a company mission target. We want to be more visible, let's say, on LinkedIn. And there are like 16 different tasks happening in 5 different boards. And how are you going as a manager of this mission or this piece of the mission to see what is happening? You would have to jump around, and now you can just create one board and just pull the information. they are the same information. They are clones. So it's not like you're copying something. So
well, it's not that much different than the My Board. Well, so I have the ability to go in today and say, like for me, Christian, I might be working on a dozen different projects or have boards, but I can go in there and see everything assigned to me in that My Board view. Now, if I'm able to go in there, as you said, if I'm able to construct that based on an initiative or based on a label, maybe that's the way to apply that. If I could go in there and look at a board that's created around these labels or these specific tags, just to say that I tag this task as part of initiative 1 of our 3 initiatives in our company, and I can then go look at a board of everything tagged with initiative 1, then that's very powerful. That's an excellent executive view into activity. I mean, being able now for being a manager or an executive to have to go in there and drill into the detail and track activity, you can do that in KanBo today. I mean, you can go in there and have that level of visibility, but being able to go to one place and have it roll up, that's pretty cool.
I mean, it could be rolled out dynamically, as you say. Like this is a virtual board that tags and grouping it by boards. But sometimes you need a more static. You need to be custom. Like even if those cards are not tagged like that, I can use tagging for initial pre-filling. But then you're starting to actually build it or move the cards around in your virtual board based on the lists, and the lists are like top priority tasks or whatever. And what's the difference between this virtual board and to My Board, which My Board is the specific virtual board,
right.
Is My Board, you are the only one who can manage this and so on. Maybe you can share with it with others. The virtual boards will be like normal boards where you can say like, I am giving it public, so everybody can have now a look into a certain initiative and how this thing is evolving, but not having to go to each boards of departments in order to find the cards related to that. So that's how we imagine the concept of hub sites, but with fine granularity. I can imagine that not everybody needs this kind of a tool, but I think there will be a need for that, and that's why KanBo extends basically this. And imagine then having this board, this virtual board, and having a web part that you can actually place on the hub site as, let's say, the view of the task world. And this is something where we see our natural place within the Office 365. We will just give you more granularity and more details as an add-on.
Yeah.
You are the engineer. You build the hub site, and you can use our component to give you even more insight.
Well, I think that we're definitely going to be playing as soon as they're available, because I think the hub site, even though it's dynamically pulling from these communication and team sites that are out there, you still have that top level data that you can go and build. And part of that view, I think, would be critical, would be that portfolio view. So again, from a project management perspective, maybe each one of those sites has a specific board or project plan, but you can have as across that dashboard of that top level of the hub site, have that one roll-up view of that of all those activities or that initiative view. I mean, look, there's a lot of things that you can go and do. I think it's great to see more and more of the out-of-the-box capability. Having the dynamic roll up of this capability is all about surfacing information. It's just it's not that it's the end all be all, for this capability. It's just yet another way that you can dynamically surface the content and help your end users, help your management chain to consume the right information at the right time. I mean, because as you know, that no matter how much you provide of reporting and data and roll-ups and all those kinds of things, is that people's attention can be fleeting. And so sometimes it's just a matter of, if it's more dynamic, it's different. And so that it may get them to come and participate. But providing it in ways that can be easily consumed, and again, that are automatically give you that mobile experience, I mean, that's going to be very powerful. It'll be fun to play with the capabilities and experiment there, and certainly to tell some stories around show how it can be done using KanBo for those things and how it fits in with those.
Yeah, we're totally looking forward to it, and we already built some web parts for this SharePoint framework. So they are, I guess, they will be also built on the SharePoint framework. So
yep,
building another web part is just not about the technology; it's actually about how to provide a web part that gives you an added value in this context of hub sites. That will be challenging for us, but I see there a lot of potential because this is another container where we have a natural fitting part.
Right. Yep, exactly. That's, again, a decoupling of information. You guys fit great within that story.
Yeah. So we are looking forward to it too.
All right. Well, it'd be fun checking out. And I know that we're out of time here. Michael, thanks a lot for your time as always. Great. I know we'll be back with more discussions as we decipher all of the announcements that came out of Ignite. But anyway, we'll have a great week.
Thanks a lot, you too. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.